Hello, dear friends, and welcome to our podcast Insight Reading Enlightenment, dedicated to sight reading through the lens of historically informed performance practice. My name is Darina Ablogina.
And I'm Sebastian Mitra. If you're a musician who reads music, you've probably gone through the important step of sight reading a piece. Usually when you open the book and you are confronted with a new piece of music, the first thing that you do is try it out. And, without knowing what's on the score, you attempt to decipher it. That being said, hopefully, as you come closer and closer to the performance of this piece, you're no longer sight reading the piece. You've internalized it, you have a muscle memory, and you know your own interpretation of it. However, these beginning steps, the early stages of learning a piece are quite important, I think. But it's also a part of musicianship that musicians don't really like to talk about. It's a part of our playing that maybe we're embarrassed about because it's probably the time you make the most mistakes. But obviously, when you're sight reading the piece, you're probably making, more mistakes than you would in the performance.
That's true.
Because it's a completely new score. And so you also adopt different techniques that are different when you're playing to when you're just reading something, which is sort of the goal of this podcast, I would say, is to discuss these techniques.
Exactly. But also an interesting moment, the freshness of perception.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that we'll lose with the time. With the time. Yes, that we'll lose.
As you learn the piece.
Yes, exactly.
As it becomes more familiar to you.
Yes.
The things that are surprising.
You expect them.
Yeah.
Another moment about sight reading, some people are trying to impress their audience or their colleagues.
Yes.
And then they say, well, actually I was sight reading in the concert.
Of course. But it's not a good thing.
No.
It's not a good thing.
It's very stressful.
It's very stressful.
Maybe I was thinking, why should it be so stressful? Maybe we just need to practice a bit our sight reading skills, and then it will be much better.
Because it's possible to practice sight reading skills.
Yes, and for instance, I know that in Moscow Conservatory they have a sight reading exam for piano players where you have to transpose and sight read, and it's very intense, and they have to prepare to this exam.
Well, the Russians.
So what do we experience when we read music? How do we react to the details of the composer's writing, to the amount of information in the text? Why do we lose this sense of novelty while practicing the piece?
These are very good questions. So in this weekly show, we're going to explore sort of all aspects of sight reading, from the very first time we see a piece to maybe even a couple times in, we recognize something, we analyze what we've done, and then we maybe go over it again to see what happens the second time. But by doing this, we really want to show the first steps of the process. When we get a piece, we want to show this to the audience because this is part of our musical training that is hidden, I think. This is part of this is the behind the scenes that people don't see.
The process of making music.
The process of making music.
And it's so important, the preparation time.
The preparation time. But also the lack of preparation time, right? In real time.
Yeah.
What we are experiencing.
Exactly.
So we get a piece. We have a piece in front of us. A new piece that presumably we haven't seen before. And what do you look at?
Immediately I see piano, forte.
True. The key also. When I'm reading something like this that has known figures, there's two things that I think about. One is the bass motion, so how one bass note goes to the next, for example, by step or by leap, which that will probably tell me what the chord is. I think I know, but we'll find out.
Let's see.
wanted to talk about something, which is how can we stay together when we're actually sight reading?
That's a good question.
Like the cadence, the end cadence. I thought we were quite together there.
Yes.
But how? I'm not even looking at you. You know what I mean?
I think you have this feeling.
It's like there's a collective feeling, right? You just kind of know when you're going to...
Or maybe you hear my breath.
I don't know. But I think it's not just me. I think it's the combination. Of course, maybe you lead, but then also I lead. You maybe follow my hands or...
Sometimes.
You know, that's something that's interesting. Like,
yeah, how to listen to each other and how to follow each other.
Yeah. All the while reading the music. It somehow works, like...
Well, but we are musicians. Okay?
Well, that is supposed to be our profession. You're not wrong.
Yes, that's why with sight reading, you're not a newborn baby, you know, with sight reading. You have already some skills. You have your basso continuo background and I can read the weird notation with some special ornaments. Even though you're looking at the piece for the first time in your life, still you're already somehow prepared to sight read it.
I like the idea that we can be together even if, you know, you haven't seen the music before. I like this idea a lot. Can you talk a little bit about the low cadence that you do? What happens here?
Well, I try to follow the style. It's just a little ornament that we have seen before. It's like a gruppetto with a little expressive gesture. And then I do sort of this play with major minor. So first I play in A flat and then I play in A natural.
Right. The ambiguity.
Yeah, exactly.
There's an ambiguity there, which is definitely in style.
Of course, even later, like Schubert, he does that all the time. And then I just use a diminished chord.
How do you decide that sort of on the spot? Or, I mean, obviously you've studied how to do that before, like, it's not your first cadenza.
Yes, mostly I decide on the spot. I think it's much more interesting now because I have some experience. But normally I would write it down.
Okay, yeah.
And for instance, when I played this piece 3 years ago, I have written down a little cadenza, which also had a diminished chord at the end, but it's a bit different. It's just... Yeah, so it's a bit similar, but...
No, I quite like the new one, actually. If I saw it without the title, which is Allegro ma non troppo, it could be Andante. And it's also written in basically the same way as the adagio.
I think the tempo feels pretty similar to the first movement.
And also if you don't look far ahead, you get tricked. You have to look through at least the first page.
Oh my God. How many bars do you see?
Me personally, I can read 4 notes ahead.
Good.
maybe one measure ahead I can do.
One measure, cool.
I think when you get used to reading this type of music, you kind of predict what's going to happen, actually. You kind of know.
Also, you have to sort of compose your inventing this continuo.
Yeah, you're inventing the continuo. I mean, that's also another thing is that I've played a lot of continuo. So my hand actually just kind of naturally falls into certain patterns that I already know, that I've built up. But if I was reading something, which I think we will later, with a part that I actually is written out for me, then I have to kind of predict what's going to happen. Of course, if it's not too difficult, I can actually just read what's happening and it's okay. But if there's big scales, I can sort of maybe quickly analyze what the scale is going to be, and instead of reading each note, I just play what I think is going to be the scale. Yeah. So I say, oh, it's A major scale, just play an A major scale, and I can already go to the next bar. So that type of thing. That's sort of a reading... Yeah.
Reading tip.
Actually, a reading tip. You know, like in a book, I guess, you don't really skip lines in a book, but sometimes you do. I mean, it's going to happen.
That's right.
Or if you have to...
If
you have a test the next day on your book, you know, you say, oh, this paragraph is describing something that I already know, so you just skip it. Exactly, it's the same thing.
Wow. A lot of unexpected surprises. Yeah, for me as well. Even though I have played this sonata many years ago.
Right. It's still surprising. It's like so surprising. It's so simple and sounds so
easy.
So easy.
Yeah. Well, for me it was especially interesting to read the handwriting of the composer.
Yes.
Sometimes, actually, I think before I had an experience with this composer, so I got used to his vocabulary. Because sometimes he just writes a sign that reminds me of a number 2. So maybe before reading this kind of late style composers, you would need to maybe read something about them and about their style, or maybe listen to some music.
Also, I think Müthel has like a really very specific language, and also has very specific notation that doesn't really exist so much. I think he kind of invented it for himself. And I've played a bit of his organ music and his keyboard music. And I played one of his concertos. My old teacher in Amsterdam, recorded the complete works of Müthel on clavichord. And we did a lot of it on clavichord. I can't really find a specific influence of his. Except we know that he did study with Bach.
Exactly.
Very late. When he was young.
Yeah.
But when Bach was quite old, I think.
Yeah.
And you see kind of this galant style, but it's what's specific about him, I think, is all these mixed rhythms. You know, the triplets and then the 32nd notes, and then he combines them all. Syncopations, everything. He's like really going for everything here. Jumps and everything, you know. And
also dynamic-wise, it's very rich. A lot of variety.
Thank you very much for listening, and we will meet again on Friday next week.
Next week, French music that we're going to read, some auteurs, as well as some other composers, and we'll be focusing mostly on dance meters and dance styles, as well as just ornaments and style in general for French music.
Looking forward
to it. See you later.
Yes.
Coming up next on... You know, like 2 weeks ago, I literally told my friend Michaela, I was like, you know what my dream is? To have a podcast.
Really?
And here
I
manifested.
Really? It was
like a
my
mini dream. Wait, but what are we doing next week? Let's think about this.